Burnout is not always about doing too much. Sometimes it is about living in a constant state of internal pressure, where your nervous system never gets the signal that it is safe to slow down. Today, we are talking about burnout as a mind body experience and what it actually takes to come back to steady energy, focus, and inner peace. Welcome to Inner Peace Better Health, the space where we explore the connection between your nervous system and your well being and a calmer life. I am Nazish, and my guest today is Julie Cyvonne, a former attorney turned high performance psychedelic coach. Today's topic is how to help with burnout, with a focus on emotional regulation, sustainable success, and what changes when you work with the nervous system instead of forcing willpower. You will leave with a clearer way to recognize burnout early and practical steps to start recovering without a shame. So, welcome to the show, Julie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. I am so excited to have you here. So, Julie, before we get into the tools and framework, I am curious when you hear someone say, I am burned out, what do you usually notice is happening underneath the words?
Yeah, so when we talk about burnout, or you can say, I'm really stressed out, I'm overwhelmed, I'm afraid, what it's signaling at the same it's signaling to the same things in the brain, right? Which means we're seeing too much stimulation, too much blood flow in the amygdala. And when that part of us is activated, we're not able to think rationally. All the choices we are able to make from that point are into one of four categories. And that's where you hear different things like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so we might get into things where we're really combative, right? Like someone says something to you on the internet, it triggers you, and then you're in a fight in the comments, or maybe you shut down, like you feel like you can't do anything, like you know what you want to do or is the next step, but you're kind of frozen in paralysis on the couch, in bed, whatever. Maybe you start fawning, which that can look like, in a fight saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Or for people who maybe, have a coach or a therapist, it can be looking to them for the answer. Like, what do you think I should do? Like, what's the right next step? Or, it can be and freezing and flight can look very similar, right? But it can be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna deal with this." So maybe we get a notification from our credit card company like, "Hey, you're behind on a payment." It's like, "Oh, I'll just act like that's not there." And so what I'm seeing at the crux of it is like people are falling into one of these four categories because when they're experiencing burnout, what they're really experiencing is a sense of nervous system dysregulation.
I agree. And that is such a beautiful way and a simpler way to put it for all our listeners to understand. And you know that distinction matters because burnout is often treated like time management issue when it is really a regulation issue. So let's go a little deeper into that. What do you think most people get wrong about burnout, especially high achievers who are still functioning?
Yeah, I really like what you said about time management. At the end of the day, like I don't believe anyone is lazy. I don't believe people are procrastinators. I believe that there is some fear around whatever it is that they're not doing, right? So for myself, I used to be an attorney, and in law school, I really sometimes struggle to like get up and start studying, start whatever. And I really was beating myself up at that point, thinking, oh my God, I'm lazy, or exactly what you said, I need to manage time better, or I shouldn't be doing this. But here's the thing, there was well, I don't think that was really what I was meant to be doing, right? Looking back at it, right? But I was also it's scary. Anything that when we have a relationship with fear where we haven't been able to kind of meet fear where it is and to create some I know this is gonna sound counterintuitive, but safety around fear, that's actually a big thing that I work on with my clients. It's like teaching ourselves, our bodies, I can do scary things and it's okay. I actually really encourage people to make a list of everything that scares them and include everything that they're procrastinating on or everything they say like they're lazy for not doing. And then every single day, doing one of those things, whether it is opening the email from your credit card telling you that you're past due or telling your mom, "Hey, I don't want to come to this family reunion because, I don't actually get along with her family and I don't want to spend my time that way." All the way to something big like jumping out of a plane, right? We have to create a safety within our body to know it's okay to do scary things. and then if I do them, it's gonna be okay because our brain does not logically separate fear into different categories. So whenever we become afraid of something, our brain, our prehistoric brain, is interpreting that as something that's life threatening, right? So you can get a text from your boyfriend where you feel like, oh, his tone was off because he used a period instead of an exclamation point, and your brain is reacting the same way as if a predator was chasing you. And that is something where it's this really interesting like juncture in human development where we're not fully like a caveman brain, but we're also not fully like a supercomputer, and it's up to us to still do a lot of, like, the filtering and distilling. So I think I would start there of, like, I don't think anyone's lazy. I don't think you're procrastinating. I think there is some fear there, and your relationship with fear is actually the issue.
I agree, and that is such a genuine way to put it. I mean, that is really going to land with a lot of listeners right now. And when someone is functional on outside but depleted on the inside, what tends to be the first real cost that shows up, like body, mood, relationship, or focus?
Yeah, so like high functioning burnout often looks like I can show up for my job, whether that be all my corporate cuties out there crushing it in the corporate world or people who have their own business, whatever. They can show up for their job. But outside of their job, they really can't hold it together, whether that looks like my house is really dirty, I either barely eat or the stuff I do eat is, not actually nourishing. It's the fast stuff. It's the stuff that's really like highly satiating. So the stuff that's super salty, over processed because you are looking for something to you're trying to fill this hole, right? Or it's people who can't stop scrolling on their phone after work. They just get into bed and it's instantly on TikTok, or they get stuck in these Netflix, like 18-hour binges. There are signs that you can function at the place where you quote unquote matters, right? Your job, but everything else in your life, no one would guess, right? Based on how you show up to work, that that's how the rest of your life would look, or you have really dysfunctional relationships, right? Like being in romantic relationships that aren't serving you, or those people who party really hard on the weekend because they're trying to shut down their brain from the constant whir of overstimulation.
I agree with the fact people who try to party every weekend to shut down, that is something a lot of people go through and without realizing that they are going through. So, I feel like that burnout is not just exhaustion. It is often a long season of operating with stress as the baseline. And that explains, that helps explain why rest alone sometimes does not fix everything.
Well, I think, yeah, rest alone can is not gonna fix everything, but I would also argue that, like, most people aren't actually resting. They're like, "Oh, I'm laying down." Yeah, but you're on your phone. Like, that's just a constant flood of dopamine. Your brain isn't resting, right? Scrolling on your phone is resting. Watching Netflix is not resting. Truly, like, being outside without your phone, going for a walk in nature, taking some time to meditate, visualize, do some breath work, working out without your phone. Honestly, anytime you have your phone and you're using it, you are not resting. So I also think that's a big part that people are like, well, I'm not doing anything. Like, yeah, maybe you're not like burning calories, but your phone is super stimulating and your brain never gets the opportunity to shut off.
I agree. So, when you look at these burnout patterns, what deeper drivers do you see the most? Things like perfectionism, people pleasing, fear, identity, or even some unresolved stress in the body.
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day, most of burnout comes from A, not knowing what's important to you, like what are your values, and then B, not designing your life around them. Because what oftentimes happens is people like have a career or a business and they try to fit life into that box versus like how do you want your life to look and then fitting career and business into that. But I see this in myself. I see it in so many clients I have when I ask them, okay, well, what's important to you? And for instance, they tell me health and longevity. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you prioritizing in your life? Oh, well, I'm not. Okay, well, there's a big disconnect there. And if you're not living like, we want to call it congruently, authentically, whatever, then you are going to burn yourself out because and I know this is kind of a cheesy phrase, but your cup isn't getting filled.
I agree. And that is absolutely such a clear and way to put it. Um, let's just stay with the nervous system piece for a moment. What happens internally when someone is in go mode for years? How does that shape focus and emotional regulation?
Yeah, well, if we want to look at it from a physiological perspective, what happens is you start to have really poor vagal tone, right? So your vagus nerve is the thing that when you get activated into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, if it you have good vagal tone, that means like the rubber band is going to snap back really quickly and you can get back into rest and digest. So let's say something scary actually does happen, right? Maybe a car almost hits you in a crosswalk. Of course, you're going to have that flood, you're going to have that rush, your amygdala, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, but good vagal tone once you, like, exit the crosswalk and you're safe again, you'll come back down, your heart rate will come back down, your blood flow will go into your prefrontal cortex, and you'll be fine, right? But for people who are in a constant, like, dopamine rush, like, they're constantly stressed, they never get time away from work, their phone, etcetera, their vagal tone is really low. So if something happens, right, it's like it takes forever for it to go back down until it's almost damn near impossible to get back into rest and digest because the rubber band is so stretched out. It's like a hairband, right? Like you've used it too many times and it really takes some deep work to get the vagal tone back.
I, that is absolutely true. And that wasn't just advice, that was some like real time perspective. And that framing reduces shame. It moves us from what's wrong with me to my system adapted to survive. And now I want to bring this into real life because burnout has very specific signature day to day.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? So when we also look at like the science behind shame, there's a scientist, his name's David Hawkins, and so he matched Hawkins, not Hawking, like Stephen Hawking, but he matched the frequency of different emotions, right? So the highest frequency emotions are those like bliss, elation, awesome, which makes sense. Of course, that would have a lot of energy, it would be so high frequency. But the lowest frequency emotions are like shame, guilt, judgment of self and others. And when we have lower frequency emotion, what happens is like we get stuck there because again, what does a low frequency mean? It's low energy. So if we're in a low frequency, then we're gonna be more apt to repeat things. And that's why, like, kind of an extreme example, but binge eating, right? What oftentimes happens is someone doesn't want to do it, they do it, and then they tell themselves a terrible story about themselves. I suck, like, I'm fat, I can't stop this, whatever the internal narrative is. But because they're shaming themselves, they're more likely to repeat it. So we can really only break a cycle of behavior when we can move out of shame.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And moving out of shame is something that, is easier said than done. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of strength, insight for you to just get out of that phase. So
I
you
think
work, yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I agree, like, when we think about jumping from like, some people think the jump is, "Okay, I need to stop shaming myself, I just need to start loving myself." Because again, I think it's well-intentioned, but we hear, like, "Self-love is the key," and that's really hard. If you're trying to go from, "I suck and I'll never be able to change," to, like, "I love myself," that's a really big leap, versus if we were to look at okay, what if we could just get to, like, in a state of neutrality? Instead of "I suck," it's like, "I ate something I didn't wanna eat. I said I wasn't going to, but I did." Like, what could have gone differently? How would I have liked it to go? If we can get into neutrality and curiosity, that's a way easier jump than, like, being obsessed with yourself.
Yes. And you work with science based framework that blends nervous system regulation, mindset work, and habits. If someone is burned out, what is the first small step that actually creates change, not just motivation for a day?
Oh, okay, if someone is really burned out, what's the first small step? Um, hmm. I would really go through, I would even Google, because this is like anyone can find this online, list of values, right? I would look at it because there's like hundreds of values out there. I would figure out what are 5 things that are so important to you? Maybe it's peace, freedom, joy, whatever. Rate yourself on all of them. Okay, so in my current life, how well am I living these values in my day-to-day life? Again, no judgment, just from observation. And then to pick one and say, what is one thing that I can switch, right? That is going to help me live more in accordance with this value, right? Because change happens from a small sustainable step, not from overhauling your entire life. I know we're like in New Year's resolution mode right now. Like, this is where people fail because they're like, I am going to work out 7 days a week and I'm never going to eat another carb. And it's like, that's not realistic. Do one thing until it becomes a way of being, and you'll see so much change in your life.
I agree. And, I think a lot of listeners will feel relief after hearing that.
Yeah. I mean, what's the thing, right? I don't want anyone to feel like I need to completely change my life because you don't.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And for listeners who are curious about psychedelics as tool, how do you talk about the responsibility in burnout conversation? Like, especially in terms of safety, legality, and making sure people do not treat it like shortcut or self medicate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of, like, how I just talk about it, right? Like, I do talk I make it very clear to people, and you can anyone can look at any of my content and see this. It's not a magic pill. It's not like, it's an Advil. I have a headache, I take an Advil, the Advil goes away. It takes work, you know? I didn't invent this, someone else said it, but I really liked it. That psychedelics assign the homework, but of course you still have to do it. It's like you still have to go to and work out. So yeah, I just think that's part of my responsibility and how I talk about it. That is how I talk about it. Anyone can see that from how I position it. I think it's important to have honest conversations about that too, because where everyone nowadays is looking for a quick fix, whether it's a GLP-1 or whatever. And it's like there are no quick fixes. Like, yes, you might lose weight immediately on something like a GLP-1, but unless you do some of that inner work around your relationship with food, your hunger cues, like once you get off of it, because it's not a lifetime medication, you're gonna gain the weight back. And so I think it's just really important that we realize there are no quick fixes with anything.
I agree. And I appreciate this balance. Like the real healing is intentional, supported, and respectful to the body. Whereas whether someone uses breath work, boundaries, therapy, or coaching, and the goal is same: steadier regulation and choices that do not come from panic.
Yeah. You gotta really, we get to create safety within ourselves so that the rest of life starts to feel better. It makes sense.
Yeah. So, which brings me to the hardest part. What happens when people slip back into the old patterns?
Oh, yeah, okay, so I think here's the thing too, people, like, they have this thing where they have a breakthrough in coaching or therapy or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, okay, this is my new way of being, this is how I'm gonna live," and it's kind of the same thing with the New Year's resolution. They expect that moving forward, they're 100% of the time going to live like that. That's just not realistic. Real integration, the goal is to live 51% of the time in the new timeline, right? So let's say I have a protein goal for myself this year, right? My protein goal is to hit 120 grams of protein a day. Do I always do that perfectly? No. Am I going to? Sometimes, like I'm going to get that protein goal. And if I don't, it's just a commitment to 51%. More often than not, I'm committed to it. I'm doing the thing, right? So you get to get again, come back to this idea of you have to give yourself some grace because you're not going to do it 100% of the time, and no one is going to do it 100% of the time.
Yeah. Doing it 100% of the time is, you know, just godlike stuff. I feel like it is not always possible to be uh, giving 100%, but I feel like you should appreciate yourself even if you are giving there.
Yeah, you have to give yourself grace along the journey. Like if you are constantly looking at there's this book called The Gap and the Gain, right? If you're constantly in the gap of like what's not working, what am I not doing, then you're never going to be able to appreciate all the things that are, right? And the goalpost is always going to be changing.
Yeah. And I believe that struggle doesn't mean that you're failing, it means you're human.
Yeah, honestly, I think the most successful people just know how to fail and keep
Mhm.
going. Right? Some people is failure is like, "Oh my god, I have to stop," but the most successful people have failed a bajillion times and they've just kept at it.
I agree, absolutely. So, what are few sustainable practices that protect against relapse into burnout, especially for ambitious women who still have big goals and real responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, when you feel yourself getting back there, like, just remind yourself, "Hey, this is not gonna be perfect." Okay, so here I am. Like, appreciate what is working. I noticed this. I stopped. I paused. I didn't push through. I gave myself some grace. So focus on the good. Understand that it's not going to be 100% shift. And then, really get curious of like, okay, so how did we get back here? What what did I learn from this that I no longer want to take moving forward? And where can I go from here?
I agree. Healing doesn't break because you stumble, it breaks because, you stop being kind to yourself.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like no change. This is not my opinion. This is like behavioral psychology, right? Like no change is going to happen if you're continuously punishing yourself verbally, mentally, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. So, for people listening who feel numb, behind, and tired of trying, what is one compassionate truth you want them to hear today? Like one tiny action they can take in the next 24 hours to signal safety to their body.
Yeah, well, I would say that it's like you always have the opportunity to start again, right? Every moment is a fresh moment. I think we really get stuck on like, oh, well, I messed up New Year's or oh, it's Tuesday and I messed up Monday. No, no, no. Like time is that's just all a construct. Every moment is a new moment. You can begin again right now. Just listening to this, if you feel like you did something you didn't want to do a moment ago, honestly, I would turn my phone all the way off and just see how long you can leave it off. I use it the phone, the internet, like, so much of that is the problem. Go outside, get a little sun on your face, like, reconnect with the truth of humanity, which is, like, humans are animals, we're meant to be in nature, and let yourself reconnect with that peace before you come back to the overstimulus of your phone.
Yeah, I agree. Every setback carries data. So if you slipped, you should pause before judging yourself and, just the goal isn't perfection, it is all about being aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. Julie, where can our listeners find you and learn more about your work and connect in a way that feels aligned?
Yeah, you can find me at JuliCyvonne on Instagram. That's like all one thing, no spaces, no periods. Same thing with my website. That same thing, juliesavone.com. You can send me a DM or fill out the question form on my website. I respond to all of them. I would love to connect with you more there.
Amazing. That is wonderful. I will make sure to include these details in the show notes so that many, many people can connect with you and figure their way out of whatever they are dealing with.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this amazing time and all the insights that you shared with us today on our show. And dear listeners, if today's episode felt personal, take a breath with me right now. Inhale slowly, exhale gently. You are not lazy, you are not broken, you are not responding to a system that has been on for too long. Start small, stay consistent, and ask for the support when you need it. Thank you for listening to Inner Peace Better Health. And if this helped you, share it with someone who is carrying too much and come back next time for more grounded conversation towards healing.